Hey everybody, Riot Morton, Riot Kent, back at it again, destroying metas, ruining games. No, I'm just kidding. But we are back with the patch postmortem series. We had our first patch, and so it's time to reboot this series again. And this is where we go over the last patch and talk about what worked, what didn't, what we're proud of, and what we screwed up. So yeah, Kent, how you been doing lately?
Been good playing some Lilia reroll on live, having a lot of fun. But this patch, it's been a while since we did one of these patch postmortems. In this patch, I think there's some packaged changes that I'm excited to talk about. Whether we did a good job on it or some stuff we could have done better.
Yep, cool. Well, why don't we just jump right into it and go from there? So first off, there were a bunch of cool new little legends. Dragonmancer Kaiser is sweet. I will say personally, I wish normal Kai'Sa had the finisher because I think I like the purple from normal Kai'Sa, but the
Yes,
finisher is sweet. So
I really like the base Kai'Sa. Not having the finisher is a little bit sad, but I really like how the base Kai'Sa looks.
yeah, I use Dragonmancer Kai'Sa with the base Kai'Sa missiles as the boom. So
A little bit of both.
yep, cool. All right, let's see here. Let's start with Astral. So Astral, we added a breakpoint per star level. Some idiot made 14 tables or 13 tables, I guess. Don't know who would do that.
Who would do that?
Yeah, but generally, what I'll
Smart.
say is like I think that change of giving every breakpoint a table was good. I think that way you can just trust that you're getting better and better stuff. I think Astral's still in a weird spot, and spoilers for the upcoming learnings article at some point, but like early game drip feed rewards continue to be this thing that at least at the highest level, there's this perception of like if I get 3 Astral and open fort and do really well, my econ's really high. I think it's good that players enjoy that, but I'd rather that be a viable play style without hitting a specific trait, rather than always having to hit that specific trait. So it's not specific to this change, but it is just kind of a longer term regret with Astral, I think.
Yeah, by allowing this to be an opt-in and then you can like opt out again later, means you can accumulate a lot of gold, put together really expensive comps in end game, and it feels like if you don't have this opener, you're going to be significantly poorer than a lot of other people. Yeah, again, unrelated to this change, I think this change was like fully positive. I think there are
Yeah.
still some problems to solve with Astral that we're looking to solve with next patch. Yeah, I agree with Mort.
I think for the duplicate part change though was also really really good. I think as players, less so in China. China had already kind of figured this out, but especially in like other regions, the ability to run like 2 Skarners in an Italy early and start racking in a ton of gold. I'm glad we prevented that. So yeah,
Yeah, and it was also confusing, not like very straightforward to most players. Only
yep,
a handful of players really figured that out and
yep,
optimized around it. So
yep, cool. Cannoneer. I think this one's probably divisive. I think some regions are still seeing the Zeke's Aphelios stuff do really, really well. I think 2 Cannoneer is actually still pretty decent. We're seeing the Seraphine Graves comp still run Zeri just to activate 2 Cannoneer. My stance on this is actually like it's gonna get real picky here, but like if you told me 2 was supposed to be like 140, I'd believe it. And then I think 4 is actually not a big enough jump that most of the time it's not worth running 4. Cause especially because you either have to run Namzi, who's not the best cannoneer, or you're running like Senna, who's not great. And then I think 6 is actually really, really good. The amount of burst you can get from 6 is really good. So maybe it's supposed to be like 140, 280, 425 or something like that. But generally, I think this was better and closer. But right now, the big thing that's off to me is like the jump from 2 to 4 never really feels worth it.
yeah, I'm basically aligned where I don't know about the jump from 2 to 4, but I'm aligned on like the 2 is like maybe slightly too good. 2 is like really a lot of power because you're spreading your AD in an AOE. And 6 is definitely still really, really good. 4 is like the part where it's like this is not that strong anymore. And so I don't know about 280, but like I think this should come up, possibly. I think the big thing we were trying to address with this change was nerfing the Zeke's Aphelios comp. And I know that, there's a lot of like public outcry for like, oh, we should make it so that you can't have multiple Zeeks. on the same Darklight unit, that kind of thing. But the problem was in Cannoneer, like the Cannoneers just did way too much damage, and like Aphelios was dishing out so much damage. And by nerfing Cannoneer this hard, it effectively like removed the comp from S tier status. I think you can still get there with like Double Trouble and then the right augments. Or you know, if you hit 3-star Aphelios and 3-star Rel, like 3-star Rel is a beast, and so like if you can do that, you can still do really well. But the conditions are much higher now, and so I think what that means is that like outside of that, the 4 Cannoneer comp becomes kind of a struggle, and it's like in the mid game it's not as strong. So yeah, maybe like something around those numbers are supposed to be correct. But I think this solves the problem and like keeps the comp at a like playable level in the right conditions.
Cool. Dragonmancer. Obviously Nunu being the biggest one here, but it wasn't just Nunu, right? Shyvana, Ao Shen, Jace, etc. So we had nerfed the 6 and 8. I think 8 feels close to what it's supposed to be. I think 6 is probably where it's supposed to be in terms of Nunu, but not in terms of everything else. 6 feels weak and Nunu feels correct. So it's like we still need to shift the power out of something like Nunu and Shyvana and into the actual Dragonmancers. We're not far off, though. I think we're really, really close here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really sad about this change because like I think 8 landed in a good spot. I think 6 is just like we're not really seeing as much Lee Sin, Volibear, Kaiser do well with 6 Dragonmancer. Like it can, but like not often. But the Nunu with 6 Dragonmancer is still like amazing. And so I wish we were able to like tackle it sooner and have, you know, bigger changes to Nunu basically instead of nerfing Dragonmancer as hard. But you know, with localization lock and all that kind of stuff, we weren't able to do that for the last patch, and so we hit Dragonmancer harder. And so we're not that far off though. Agree.
Yep. Cool. Mage. Certainly, we know these weren't the numbers we intended to ship. But I will say, even the numbers that we did intend to ship, I don't think would have been perfect either. I think the big thing here is that 5 and 7 ended up probably a lot better than we wanted. The positive here being mages are playable, which they weren't in the previous patch, and so that was a positive. But wow, the amount of burst you can do with a 7 mage comp is probably out of line. And then the other big thing, obviously, is that a mage emblem on a Zyra combined with Siphon gave you the free shred, or excuse me, not Siphon, Silas gave you the free shred and the Zyra and the 7 mage burst. And so like it ended up kind of just being a little more damage than I think we're comfortable with.
Yeah, we weren't seeing as much Mage Zyra on the previous patch, and then with this patch coming up, and then like Mage getting buffed, in this like big buffs in this way, the Mage comp became oppressive. I think like the problem is in like a little bit in these Mage numbers for sure, and also, but mostly in that like, man, Zyra with a Mage emblem just like deletes a row guaranteed. Doesn't matter if you're a tank or something; it's gone.
Yep. Yeah, I think, like I said, 5 and 7, I think, were the big ones here that didn't quite feel right. 9 actually feels correct, maybe even underpowered, as crazy as that sounds, but
yeah, I think with the right conditions, 9 can be good, but then like it's kind of still hard to achieve. And you're playing 9 mages, you know, like your board is kind of whack. So the number definitely has to be high. Maybe could have been like 175 here.
Yep. All right, Ragewing. I think this is one of those changes that we softballed. You know, it's like we were light, so you know it is a nerf to the Xayah comp. Technically, was it the big nerf to the Xayah comp? No. Is the Xayah comp still probably one of the easiest things to play? Yes. Now, I think the thing that actually helped us in the meta is that a lot of the emerging comps, like the Mage comp, for example, or the Seraphine Graves comp, do decent into the Xayah. So that actually kind of kept Xayah in line. But I still think the Xayah comp, for how easy it is to play, is still a little over. And so, like, this wasn't enough to me.
Yeah, I think the key word there is, like, easy to play. There's this... The biggest problem I have with Ragewing Xayah is that, like, you go 8 and you go 9, and then you have this really rigid comp. You hit a Terra 2, Soraka 2, you don't replace the units for those 2 units. I mean, you can, but it'll be, like, on the same or weaker, and so... like it just feels so wrong that you don't think about the comp anymore once you put together this 6 Ragewing guild comp. And so that's why we took a lot of the power out of Ragewing here. It's like we're trying to incentivize you to like not always have that Rakan Hecarim in, or like, you know, maybe you remove some other, maybe you don't play Shyvana and you play some other like some other type of frontliner with Zaya, just trying to encourage players to like experiment around and place other types of units. Obviously, we didn't go far enough. It's not just in the trait too, just like the units in that comp are also all just such good units. And so work to be done here. We just went really light.
Yep. Okay, Shimmer Scale. I'm actually curious because I didn't get a chance to look at the data this week. Busy with other work. I know you and the team were handling this a bit. I didn't get a chance to actually look at like the Shimmer Scale item power curves relative to each other. My hope was that these changes helped, but what I've also seen is that 3 Shimmer Scale openers aren't particularly exciting still. So I think even though these changes ended up positive from what I can tell, it may not have been enough, and there might be more work to do, whether it be on the unit side or some of these items, perhaps.
So the Shimmer Scale power curve actually looked very healthy, and so I think Shimmer Scale seems to be in like a decent spot. I think the opener is the part where it like struggles the most. Like if you can get it going and you get to the end game and you hit crown, like you're good.
Well, yeah.
But and if even if you hit 7, you're you're gonna do really well. But like in the beginning, you're just really really struggling in the early game. And so yeah, I think something needs to be done there for the early game.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Bonky Kong. It got buffed. Good. Didn't really move the needle though, so it seems like there's even more room to go here.
Yeah, big Sag. These are like fairly decent buffs, so we thought like this would do quite a lot, especially with like Jack's buffs along with this. So, but turns out like it's still too hard to play Donkey Kong, especially in this meta where like your frontline just gets blown up by a lot of units.
Yep. Yep. I think that's actually a good point that we should talk about really briefly is like the current meta is not very favorable to frontline, like Idis, Terra, anything like that. There's a lot of things that skip the front line. There's a lot of things that shred the front line. And so that generally has a pretty big shift on things as well.
Yeah, every single comp has whispers, basically. Like you're always playing Zyra in something, or you have like a Twitch, or you're building Last Whisper. And so like there's always something that's shredding your front line.
Yep.
And yeah, it makes it really hard to play.
Cool. Aphelios, I think this change was necessary and great. I'm just going to say it. I think Aphelios is probably close to where he's supposed to be right now.
Yeah, a good Aphelios still does well, and you can't force it and go 9 off Aphelios 2 anymore.
Yep. Kaiser, it's crazy to me, but I think Kaiser is exactly where she should be right now. Like you could argue Dragonmancer might need a little bit of buffs, but Kaiser herself actually feels correct. And it's so fascinating the difference here between the 5 damage, right? But like we're seeing Kaiser 2 as a good item holder in the early game like she's supposed to be. We've seen her do okay in some reroll comps with Dragonmancer. Like this is where a 2 cost is supposed to be. So I think Kaiser's like perfect, which again, the perception in the previous patch was she was one of the worst units in the set. So
yeah, really glad to see because it's like now people are happy about this kind of Lagoon opener. They see a Kaiser, like hell yeah, I have a Kaiser.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good.
Good to see. Lux Changes. So this is one where the Lux 3 ended up a little lower than we intended, but I'll say good. If anything, accidentally being a little more aggressive ended up paying off. I think Lux is pretty good. We have seen Astral, like actual deep Astral kind of fall off later into the patch. It started off pretty well at the beginning of the patch. But I think Lux is pretty close to where she's supposed to be, so I would call this change a success.
Yep, I fully agree. Yeah, I think the animation makes it feel so much better. And then we're seeing, I mean, we see less of the full Astral, but we still see Astrals win lobbies. And so I think that's a good sign. And Lux is just a great unit right now in this patch, even though like Mage is slightly overtuned.
Yep. Zach, I think this change was fine. I think the thing Zach's still kind of missing, though, is like his spell just tickles damage-wise.
Spell does damage?
I know that's kind of how it feels, which is probably not correct. And because he's kind of the premier tank of Lagoon. Now, that being said, I've seen him get a lot of use. He's a great item carrier into like Pantheon for something like the Seraphine comp, so it's not like he's bad by any means. But I do feel like he doesn't quite have an identity. Now, again, that's hard because he's like a 2 cost. But I wish his spell had more of an identity, and I think that's something we'll have to address at some point.
I mean, he's kind of like, he's just like a drain tank with, Guardian big shield. So he just like stalls for a really long time. I think that's like his pattern. It's kind of cool. I think but I completely agree. Seeing him like do the big, bubble thing and then it hits for 45 and you're like, okay, well, that didn't do anything.
Yep. Cool. Nunu, you kind of touched on this earlier, how we couldn't quite do the thing we wanted to do, but I will say, I think this one's frustrating because I think at higher elos, this is probably pretty close to correct. I think Nunu is like the thing that you can play if you like get the Dragonmancer spat early and you get the right items and you can pull it off. The problem is at lower elos and just frankly the frustration factor, right? Like once a Nunu 3 with 6 or 8 Dragonmancer gets going, there's no stopping it. It's out of control. There's no counterplay. You lose. The game's over. And so I think the thing we've got coming in the next patch will probably help that. But I think for what we could do, this actually ended up pretty close to successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're seeing very very little Dragonmancer Nunu in high elos, but then in like the rest of the elos, this is the most frustrating thing to play against for everyone. So yeah, I think we need to like obviously just because it's not prevalent in high elo doesn't mean it's not a problem we need to address. It's still highly frustrating, and so we need to make sure that there's counterplay to this rather than like somebody hits this strategy, hits a Dragonmancer spat, and they're like, well, I'm chilling now, and then I can't. Everyone who's like playing against me, you can't do anything against it. So that feels pretty bad.
Yep. Volibear. I mean, I'm glad we buffed him. So cool. Glad we buffed him. Still kind of one of the worst units in the set right now, which I think is not really helping Shimmer or Dragonmancer. So I still think there's a lot of room to go. I think one of the things that really hurts Volibear is just how long it takes to ramp up. You either have to start taking some damage to generate that mana quickly, or it takes like 7 auto attacks, which is a long time in the current meta. So, yeah, still some work to do there. I know next patch actually doesn't have that big of changes for Volibear, but he's one that I've got my eye on personally because he doesn't quite feel like a 3 cost.
Yeah, I think what you said about Shimmer Scale. It's like Volibear. Once Volibear is in a better spot at 1 star in the early game, he's gonna feel better, and Shimmer Scale is gonna feel better because you finally have like a unit that can actually kill things. So yeah, this one was basically like it looks like a pretty big buff, but then we also nerfed Dragonmancer, and so it made Volibear like kind of end up like only slightly better, and so yeah, he needs more love.
Zeri is my vote for my least favorite champion in the set. I like even when you itemize her and she does well, it's like it's confusing, it's awkward, and then the spell sometimes hits one thing. If you get some line shots, like she does plenty of damage, so I don't think damage is the fix. I feel like for just numerical changes, this is probably as close as you could have gotten. But like you hit a 2-star Zeri early game with like a jeweled gauntlet, and it's like it doesn't feel good. You still end up losing fights, and you still get your butt kicked. I don't think that's really where we want a 2-star 3 cost in the early game.
Yeah, I agree. She just like with these numbers, like the bullets do good damage. It just usually doesn't mean much, and so kind of sad. I think like we can up her consistency. I think that's something we should have done here, and we can also kind of get there with numbers with like mana buff.
Zippy is a fascinating case to me because again, if you'd asked a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I think people would have possibly put Zippy in their worst champ of the set or trait bot, like decent trait bot, but why would you ever put items on Zippy? We're just starting to see people discover some pretty playable Zippy builds, which is good to see. So in a way, I'm kind of glad we didn't overbuff him. It does speak to how difficult he is to play, but interestingly enough, like I said, we're seeing some actual AD Zippy builds do pretty well. One of the scary things is it's with Xayah sometimes, and so it's just kind of buffing the Xayah in another way. But overall,
diversity.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Zippy's probably like I don't think there's a world where we can buff Zippy much more.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the problem with Zippy is that players I think are either building him as a tank where it's like yeah he's pretty good as a tank, but building him with like generic AD items, whereas like if you put a Rage Blade on Zippy, you're not going to be doing that well. Like it works, but you really want to put a lot of oomph into that cast because that cast hits hard, and you want that to one shot. Like you want to multiply that as much as you can and just like kill anything because you don't want him to wasting time like bouncing back, walking back up, and autoing, and like you just want him to delete and then delete and then delete and then delete. Yep. And so as players start to figure out more builds, I think we'll see more Zippy. Like in the mid game, we're already seeing some pretty good Zippies on item hold, but like Zippy 3, we haven't seen many successful ones. I think players are starting to figure it out though, so hopefully we'll see more Zippy.
Cool. Deja, we undid the rework. Good. Now she's not
Yeah.
this weird exception case. Cool. And Deja is still very powerful. One of the, assuming the Mirage variant is something that helps you, still one of the like A+ tier comps right now. So Deja seems like in a good spot. Still kind of serving as that baseline despite this change. So pretty happy with where Deja is.
Yeah, for sure. This is good revert.
Shioyu buff. I mean, glad we buffed, but clearly Jade is still not doing great. Now, what I will say that's a little tricky, though, here is that Shioyu is the best, like, 4th dragon for the dragon comp. So it's not like buffing Shioyu more is, like, a huge thing we need to do. But clearly there's some work to do on Jade in general, and so I think when Jade is weak, everyone looks to Shioyu and goes, what the hell? But... yeah, still some work to do here, but either way, directionally correct. Maybe just not quite enough.
Yeah, it brought Jade to like a good top 4 rate, but I think we still not seeing a lot of people have success with Jade. So yeah, I could have gone further.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and we touched on this briefly in some various posts and stuff, is that Jade right now has this really, I'm not going to say unhealthy, but just awkward round win rate curve, where if you hit Jade early... and we saw the rank 1 Korea player do this to like very consistent top 4s, that like it's incredibly strong, but right around stage 5 it starts to fall off really hard and starts losing in the end game to the other, you know, the S tier comps. And so Jade ends up being like a 3rd. It's like a really solid 3rd if you hit it early, or a really good transition piece, but not something you want to play in the end game. And so I think our big challenge moving forward is how do we buff Jade without making it even stronger in stage 3 and 4.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Sohm. Okay, this is going to be a controversial one because Sohm is very strong. I mean, Lagoon Mages is one of the definitely playable comps in that A+ tier. My hot take here, though, is that this change specifically was actually correct, and that Sohm in isolation is like a 3rd or 4th place comp with good items, and that you actually need other support units like Neela or Zoe or, you know, Zyra, to really turn it into a first place comp. And once those other things are kind of addressed, I think Lagoon Sohm is like where it's supposed to be. This is correct.
Yeah, there's definitely like people who've played Sohm and they're like, this unit still does nothing. And then there's people who play against Sohm and the same person plays against Sohm. It's like, what the heck? They like destroyed me.
Yep.
And just like a lot of the units around Sohm, and like I think Mage is slightly overtuned, right? So
Yep.
like those kinds of things are causing Sohm to feel a little bit oppressive in some cases. But yeah, the numbers are probably where they should be.
Yep. Swain, I think, will probably go down as one of the bigger oopsies in this set. I think trying to get a drain tank that takes 2 slots in a healthy state is really hard. When Swain is good, he's unkillable. And when Swain is not good, he falls over. We're in a meta right now where strong frontliners are not good. He doesn't do enough damage. So, like, this buff was fine. But in this meta, Swain's might be the least picked, just not good champion right now. So,
yeah, with a unit that's like relies on being the solo frontline kind of thing, you just get destroyed by all the armor shred and all the like the frontline damage, and you know you get CC'd forever. Then Xayah pulls back before you can do get your heal off, and you're just like dead. So one of the saddest things for me, I think, is like for these 2 patches for Swain to still be like meh.
Yep.
It's just really sad. It's like, yeah, Darkflight, you know, shipped and was really good, but Swain is like this cool. I really liked Swain. I was like, oh, Swain is so cool. And then he just like ended up too weak. So like this buff was intended to like not overshoot, because it's just extremely frustrating when there's an unkillable Swain all the time. But also just like something that we probably could have done something else here also to help him. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just like, you know, the meta happens to be like super against him. But like either way, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm worried what's going to happen is we're going to keep doing these micro buffs on Swain, and it's going to take about 2 or 3 patches. And so we're going to hit like right before set 8, and then all of a sudden people will find like he will have gotten to a point where he's worth investing in. And what we'll find out is like the 3rd or 4th micro patch was too much, and we just went like one step too far, and now he's in the unkillable range, and like the final patch of the set, he's going to end up dominating the meta, is what I think's going to happen.
Yeah. I that the tough part, even tougher part about him is also that like he has, these like in really unique levers of like how many dragonlings, and then each dragonling hits like different units. And so it's
Yep.
not like, oh, we can identify a problem really quickly. Swain isn't killing the unit he's casting on. It's like, oh, he's hitting everyone. So technically he's not really doing damage. But if that's higher, at a certain point, like 3 casts might kill a Zaya or something. That kind of thing where
Yep.
like it's really hard to gauge like the correct lever to pull all the time to make sure that he's in a good spot also.
Yep.
So, you're talking about these like micro changes, and it's like which one was the one that pushed him too far?
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying is like eventually you have to do enough buffs that people invest the time to optimize the comp. Right now, Swain comps are not optimized at all because he's not worth learning. But eventually, we're going to get to a point where he's strong enough that he'll become worth learning. And then in that optimization, we'll realize now he's too strong. And so it's that kind of pattern where it's like, yeah.
For what it's worth, I think China has a secret tech. I mean, it's not that secret and it's not that much of a tech because it's like, okay, it's like above average, but like there is a Swain comp with Rengar and a certain sacrifice that like it
Yeah.
works.
Well, yeah, eventually. Yeah. It's still
Yeah.
not great, though.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm not discounting that. Yeah, it works. There's people are kind of experimenting, not enough. We need more heads on it.
Yep. Asol. I think this was a buff that people were a little scared of. They saw big numbers on Big Dragon and were kind of PTSD from the Asol patch, but actually ended up fine and maybe even still not great. I think there's an interesting pattern problem that people like Sohm and Asol have, which is like they're really good at killing the small squishy stuff, but as soon as they run into like a Deja or a Sohm or another dragon, like they just can't compete, and that's where Ao Shen does better. And so finding that balance where Asol and Ao Shen is actually an interesting choice is going to continue to be a problem, I think.
Yeah, and we can't just keep pushing the number up or anything because eventually this like you're playing a cool backline comp and you're like,
Yep.
yes, I got your Twitch 3, and suddenly your Twitch 3 just gets blown up all
Yep.
of a sudden by Asol and you're like, that doesn't feel good. But like against Ao Shin, you can at least, burn through the front line, Zephyr the front line, skip to their back line, kill that Ao Shin before he casts. Like, so we can't just keep pushing up this number, but it's gonna be
Yep.
a tough balance to find for sure, to find like it might partially be like lobby dependent. Some lobbies you want Asol more, some lobbies you want Ao Shin more.
Yep. Yep. Last Whisper. This is just slam dunk. Like putting this to 60 was a mistake. We never should have done it. Glad we undid it.
Great.
Cool. Cutthroat. No one's picking that augment.
Yeah, part of me thinks that like maybe we shouldn't have this augment. It's just assassin vertical isn't really something we want to really encourage people to play anyways. We only have 4 assassins and like they don't really fit together as an assassin comp this set. So
Yep.
yeah,
I could see this being disabled just because like it's not the least picked augment, but it's got to be close.
yeah. There's like some excitement to being able to do this, but like it also means you have to play 4 assassins and like play around that. And so
Yep.
I mean, if you're sometimes also like if you're jumping on a unit to mana rev it, you're gonna kill it most likely if you're playing 4 assassins. So.
Yep.
Some stuff to do here. Basically, like, do we want this or not?
Yep.
And so yeah, probably not.
Dragonmancer Conference. I think this augment ended up a success at tier 1. I think it's healthy. It's fine for a silver. It leads to some fun games where people actually do like 3-star a lot of the Dragonmancers. I think in a meta where Dragonmancer is less weak, it'll be even more popular. And I think the only mistake was that it was enabled at 3-2, which I know you're fixing next patch. So I'm glad to see this augment back.
Yeah, at 3-2 it was fine at 1 round per turn, but like at 2 rounds, yeah, it's not usable really at 3-2. But yeah, glad people are having fun with it. People were a little bit afraid of like 2 rounds means I can't like get enough, whatever. But it's working out, and people are 3-starring a lot of things, and so yeah.
Hero in Training. This augment is weird to me. Like, I enjoy playing this augment, but it's also one of those augments I feel like when it's good, it's going to be too good. Like, I think we got away with it right now because, again, Dragonmancer feels a little weak. But I do wonder in, like, another patch or 2 when it's better if this becomes problematic.
Yeah, I think that the tough part of playing this, though, is that having 2 items that are 2 units with full items that are like good enough to use this. So I think there's still going to be that kind of struggle where like the curve isn't, you're not going to be like shooting up in terms of power or that early until like later when you start to hit Chaos Dragon or Treasure Dragon and start to be able to itemize your other unit. So I think we'll be okay, but
We'll see.
a valid fear. It's like
Yep.
At some point, Dragon Master is gonna be amazing, and this is just gonna be like really good.
Yep. Lucky Gloves. I'm going to chastise you a bit in a good way here. I think Lucky Gloves is a very fun augment that a lot of people want to play. I think all of these changes were good at making it more fun and better, but I also think there's still a lot more work to do. And like we've kind of signed ourselves up for this like long-term project of making this augment fun because it's very fun and players enjoy it. Power-wise, it's still not where it should be, I don't think.
I'm no power. It's looking very good in balance, at least. It's like 4.4, and then late if you get it later on, it's like 4.5.
Okay, but
so it's good. I think so my biggest problem with this is the wording in the tooltip. It says ideal items, and the thing is, you will not always get ideal items because it's still a Thieves' Gloves. You just get like good items, and so I think that's probably where we can like try to set the like correct tone, basically, because sometimes people will see something and it's like, how is Deathblade the ideal item for Yasuo? It's like, well, no, it's not, but it's like that's pretty good. Like it's better than getting like a static shiv. So
what you're saying is you lied to our players, Kent.
I want to unlie to our players.
Either way, like I said, it is a very fun augment, though.
So the power, all these changes, especially I think the thing where it's like it grants full items now. People spike really hard with the prismatic on 2-1, and so like getting this and getting always full items on 2-1 has been really good. And so like now it's at a good power level. I think we just need to also, I think we can tune back some of like the bad options as well. I think like the Ionic Spark, everyone just hates that one. It's like, yeah, we want you to have fun. Let's not give you that kind of thing.
Yep. Ricochet, this was a slam dunk. Now that Cannoneer is a good comp. If you've ever faced a 6 Cannoneer with Ricochet comp, I'm glad this change is in.
Yep.
Cool. Verdant Veil. I think Verdant Veil is such a fascinating augment. Like, this change did nothing. It's still a bad augment. It's a bad augment because the meta is not very CC-based, and even something like Zyra, sure, you're blocking the CC, but you still take a truckload of damage, so who cares? It's just fascinating because I think Verdant Veil's power is relative to certain metas. And like I said, this is a very bursty meta. Even when there's like the Hecarim, Shyvana, Bard, Ragewing, CC Bonanza, they're still doing so much damage that Verdant Veil is not an appealing choice, and that says a lot right now. And so I think Verdant Veil existing is important because it tells us certain things about the meta. But TLDR, this change did nothing.
Yeah, it did. It made it, I think, I remember it made it a little bit better if you're taking it on 4-3. I still think it's like a below average augment. But like ultimately, it's also like lobby dependent. Some lobbies, like if you don't have many Zayas that are doing that well, like you don't really get much out of doing this. I guess like you can block one Hecarim ult, but yeah, kind of interesting that like 20 seconds of season immunity is just like not good.
Yep. And then weak spot. I'm glad we nerfed this. Still work to do, I think.
Yeah, for sure. This is just like a little band-aid thing, but it's like it's not enough. The augment is still too auto pick.
Cool. Scale Scorn 6. Glad we nerfed this. Seems fine. Honestly, probably cutting it a little further.
Yep, agree.
Karma 3. Okay, this is one where I have to admit I was wrong. I was really worried. I thought this was an overbuff. And we're still not seeing Karma comps be popular. So, if anything, this seems healthy. And to be honest, I kind of hope we see more changes like this and things like Ezreal and Talia. So, this actually ended up being a success / maybe not enough.
Thanks, Mort. I'm telling you, like this comp is just so hard to play. I think I've seen people do well with it. I've gotten screenshots in my DMs. They're like, "Look, I did it." And I'm like, "Okay, how many karmas did you natural?" And they're like 7. It's like, yeah, exactly.
But that's the point. That's the point, right? Like,
you'll do well. You're gonna streak. Then you're gonna be able to go 8 and like play Yasuo 2, play like Shield 2, all that stuff. But if you're sitting there re-rolling for karma, like what else? What low cost units are you also re-rolling with karma? It's like not many other things.
Right, but that's what we want, right? We want a 1 cost to be something you kind of like go into sometimes. If people are forcing karma, we've gone too far.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so if anything, this was a success. I was nervous, but I was wrong. It was good.
Yeah. I'm happy.
By comparison, let's look at this Nasus change. Did this change a damn thing? Nope. Honestly, we can probably still go further.
Yeah, I think part of it's frontline thing, but like also like reroll Guardian I mean, you put items on like Leona with Mirage, and she just like never dies with Electrocute, and you do that instead, right? Instead of this. So
Yeah, but
um,
I think, and this is one of the bigger criticisms about the set right now, right? Is like people want to have this like crazy fantasy of like if I get a 3-star, like if I natural a 3-star Nasus at 3-1 and I put a bunch of items on him that he can do some cool stuff, even if he falls off in stage 5. But right now, I think he falls off at like 4-1. You know,
right? Yeah. Yeah, some work to do with some of these one cost 3-stars though, for sure. Like the other ones you mentioned too. It's like we're not really seeing many people play them unless you like literally fully natural them, and that even then you don't like fully. That's not the comp that you're playing around or
yeah, I think like if you get, let's say you literally natural a 3-star Ezreal at 2-6, right? I still think you're selling that by 4-6.
Okay, that's not true. That's not true. Ezreal 3.
See, that's where we disagree, though, right? That's why you haven't been buffing him. But I'm telling you, it's like compared to the power of the end game stuff, like your Xayahs, they just don't stand up.
That part is true, but I think that part is also like has to be true. Like one cost 3-stars should not be end game carries. They should be like end game secondary carries, but they get you to the end game because they stomp on everything else in stage 4.
Yeah, it's just the difficulty of getting the Xayah compared to the Ezreal is like non-comparative, and I think that's where we've got some identity stuff to figure out. So
For sure.
speaking of which, Set didn't move the needle.
Yep.
Jax, this is a good change. It's a small change. It was supposed to be a small change. Jax is a very good champion. Honestly, I doubt we could buff Jax much more. So Jax, especially with his triple traits, so like
Yep.
he's probably fine.
Yep.
Lee Sin nerf, glad we did this. Seems fine.
Yep.
So Radiant Sunfire seems good. I didn't get a chance to check the data on this. Did it look fine?
Yeah, it came down a good amount, and then Bulwark's Oath came up a good amount because it was too weak, and so they see they're both like still. I mean, they're both like good now. I don't. So yeah, they did what we wanted them to do.
Cool. And then Dragon Imperialist, I don't think has really moved much at all.
I think this one is like, I don't know if we actually needed to make this buff, to be honest. So like, it's not like I don't think this buff is bad. It's more just like I don't know this is necessary of a buff point. But
Speaking of which, Pandora's Gold, I don't think this changed a damn thing. This patch note probably didn't need to exist.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we fixed bugs. Bugs are good to fix. And that was it. Yeah, I think obviously the big things to call out here, Zyra, Seraphine, probably the biggest two. Zyra, Seraphine, and Xayah, probably in that order. And keep in mind when I say Xayah, I don't literally mean Xayah, I mean the Xayah comp.
Yep.
Whereas...
yeah, someone's going to clip that and be like, Mort thinks Xayah is the issue.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like, Zyra literally is the issue. Seraphine literally is the issue. And the Xayah comp. Like, those are the big three I think are probably out of line compared to everything else right now.
Yep.
So.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I mean, yeah. And then there's some stuff that, you know, obviously we should have, we could have buffed to make things better. There's some that are a little weak. Siphon is an example of one.
Oh, God. Yeah. Let's be clear, though. I am so glad we did not buff Siphon this patch.
Oh, yeah, because it's Zyra. No,
yeah.
course,
Do you really want the 6 Whispers comp being stronger right now? No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about V-patching extensively. We decided not to go forward with the V-patch because we'd be adjusting just a couple of things, which I think like it would have made a decent difference, but it would risk us leaving Xayah in a very powerful spot because we needed localization in order to change the Xayah comp. And so instead of bringing the meta back to like all Xayah again, we wanted to keep those things that are like keeping Xayah in line and then focus on creating a 12.19 that addressed all of the major outliers at once.
Yeah, because I think there was a world where a B patch was literally just nerf Zyra. But yeah, I think that just puts Xayah as the sole S tier comp. And already I get plenty of screenshots per day from people that are like, look, there were 7 people in the lobby playing Xayah. And you're like, well, I don't know why they were doing that, but you know. So
also unrelated, but I mean, no, it's related. I hate how Zyra and Xayah sound so similar. So when we and it's the meta of both of them, and so we keep talking about
Xayah. Yeah, no, it's bad. It's bad. So cool. Overall though, and I think this is the torture of our lives here is like I think the Dragonlands batch is finally getting to a good spot. We're getting close, or I should say as good as it's going to get. You can debate some of the things that are working or not in the set, but I think it's as good as it's going to get right as we're about to go into Worlds, which is like cool. And then we're going to throw it all away for a set 8, and so like so
Yeah, the thing we love most is making things perfect and then throwing it in the trash can.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not dive too deep into that topic. So cool. All right, that's gonna do it from us on this patch can't talk. My name's Mort. That's gonna do it for this patch post-mortem. We'll be back in 2 weeks as always. Let us know what you think of this series. I'll be honest, we almost didn't boot it up again this time, but if you let us know you want to keep it, we'll keep it because we just want to do right by you guys. So cool. All right, that's gonna do it from us. Until next time, take it easy.
See ya.